Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. In this episode, we're joined by Victoria Torrealba, who is a holistic health coach and certified Ayurvedic practitioner specializing in gut health. Be prepared to learn why gut health is so important to human health, how modern science has been catching up to this fact over the last 10 to 15 years, the role doshas or Ayurveda energy types play in healing the gut and promoting overall health, why it is important to know our own body and the mindset needed when improving health, why health is holistic and Ayurveda recognizes this fact, and so much more. Before that though, this episode is brought to you by Riverside. Riverside is an online studio designed to record, edit and share high quality podcasts built for growth from day one. Powered by AI, you can record in 4K video or from your phone and automatically remove filler words such as ums, as, you knows, and many other speech patterns. Built for human conversations, Riverside makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to start your podcast and share your message with the world? Check out the link in the show note description to learn more about Riverside and get a 15% discount. Yes, that's a 15% discount off a paid subscription. Now, to today's episode. Victoria, welcome to Raising Consciousness today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Looking forward to our conversation today, all around exploring gut health, because I know that's your focus. But before we do that, let's focus on the first question, which sometimes trips up my guests. But who are you, and why do you do what you do?
Okay, that is the first part is a bit complicated, isn't it? Who are you? That has like a million answers, but and what do I do? What I do? So I guess the very human answer is I am Victoria, and I am a certified Ayurvedic practitioner and a holistic health coach. And I help people heal from any chronic digestive issues they might have and other health conditions as well through the framework of Ayurveda. And because of that, we focus on gut health, like you said. And why I do what I do, mainly because I think it's really important that we put out the message that we can actually heal ourselves, that there is a way that we can heal our illnesses and our imbalances in a more kind and in a more natural way. So I think it's really important to do that. And also, it's important for people to know, myself included, that there's many things that you can do to take care of your health a lot better so that you don't get that shock diagnosis in 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So I think that's why I do what I do.
You might have also answered my next question a little bit, but why does your work matter?
I think because we all need to hear that, again, that we can heal, that there is a way. And I think because we all need a little bit of support, I need it as well. I have my own coaches, my own practitioners that I work with, and same with my clients. They need that support, that person that truly gets to know them and uses a framework that, uses personalized medicine and a personalized approach to get to know the person, not just like their illness or their diagnosis, but the whole of them and how that illness kind of manifests in them as a unique individual. So I think that's what matters, because everybody needs that bit of very personalized and dedicated support.
We've covered the Ayurvedic health system a few times on the podcast, but what I love about your work is using this, I kind of call it like a timeless wisdom, right? To help people heal their gut issues. So what are the common gut issues that you commonly see amongst the people that you work with, and how does Ayurveda help to heal those issues?
It's really great that you've had lots of people talking about it, because Ayurveda is, imagine it's a 5,000-year-old, at least 5,000-year-old framework or set of wisdom, whatever you want to call it, or science or whatever it is. So there's so many angles to it that you can approach. There's protocols to basically heal every single disease that there's out there that we know of. or most of them. But in terms of, because I use the Ayurvedic approach, everything starts with your digestion. That's kind of the mantra when you use Ayurveda to heal any type of condition. So if it's arthritis, diabetes, a headache, whatever it is, we say that it started with your digestion. So we look at that first. That's kind of the first port of call. But I focus specifically on digestive conditions because, again, it's the easiest place to start, because if we get that right, then it doesn't matter if the person has IBS or gastritis or whatever. If we get that right, if we get their digestion right, then I know that I can help them prevent more complicated issues in the future. And I know that they can learn the tools to get their digestion right and take care of their digestion in the long term. So I know I can help them to prevent that, again, that shocking diagnosis. So to answer the other part of your question, the most common, gut health issues that you see is really all of them, to be honest. I mean, I think in the UK, one of the most common reasons why people go to the GP is because some sort of a digestive issue or imbalance. So I would say the most common issue is IBS, but again, IBS is a very wide term that modern day medicine has kind of grouped together. So if you have, I don't know, chronic bloating, or you have constipation, or you have stomach pain, and they don't know why it is, if it's not because of an infection or an ulcer or something like that, then you might be just told that you have IBS. It's kind of a bunch of symptoms grouped together, and kind of you're told that you have that. From the Ayurvedic perspective, it's a little bit different. There isn't a one kind of diagnosis to say, oh, you have IBS, it's a chronic condition, you might not be able to heal it. It's different. We look at it from the point of view whether, your digestion, what's happening with it. Is it too high? Is it too low? Is it because you are under a lot of stress? Is it because you're eating too much of one thing or too little of another thing? So that's why, because of your unique body type, then you'll experience certain things. Some people might experience, a lot of bloating, but other people might experience a lot of stomach pain. Both of them might be told that they have IBS, but from the Ayurvedic perspective, we treat them very different.
You kind of alluded to it, but why is gut health important? I think when we look at health, most people kind of think like, okay, the food that we eat is important, exercise, sleep, but then when we get into like the nuances, and this is something that I found very interesting, like how the role that actually our digestive system and our gut health in particular plays in that, actually how that is, and like, when we get that in a optimal place, in the right place, there's so many other like downstream positive effects of that, and on the flip side as well, that a lot of our symptoms or issues can in some way be linked back to gut health. So it really seems that our gut health is the cornerstone, or at least one of the cornerstones of health. Can you really like speak to that, and like why you feel gut health is important? Obviously that's what you do, so I'm guessing you are gonna agree with that statement as well, because I think a lot of people don't consciously realize that, if that makes sense, especially growing up and trying to navigate health.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's because, we in our modern day lives, a lot of people struggle to get to know themselves in terms of their physical body. And I have clients that when they came to me, they couldn't even identify when they were hungry or when they were thirsty, because, think about it, you might be a person that works long hours, you might be someone that has two jobs, you might be someone that has lots of family responsibilities, etc. So your day-to-day might be, full on. So you don't really have conscious time during the day to stop and think, oh, how am I feeling? Is my heart rate up? Am I feeling hungry? Or am I just feeling anxious and I just want something sweet or whatever because I'm feeling that way? So because we're a bit disconnected, because of the way we live in our modern life, it's kind of hard to make that connection between what you eat and how you feel. It kind of sounds obvious, but it's the very first step. I think a lot of us think that, oh, it's just something I'll eat and, I'll make me feel better and I'll just forget about it in the next 5 minutes. But that's in your mind level. But for your body, there's a lot of things that are happening because of that decision of eating something. So I think, to put it into perspective, why is gut health important? So from an Ayurvedic point of view, and many of the other ancient, let's call it, I don't know if traditional is the right word, but maybe ancient health systems like traditional Chinese medicine, for example, digestion and gut health, it's paramount. So it's your starting point, it's the most important thing, it's where everything starts. All illnesses are because of impaired digestive health. There is a 5,000 year old Sanskrit statement that tells you that, right? But for modern day science, the going and understanding your gut health and what actually is the role of the gut microbiome is actually relatively new. So about 15 years ago, this wasn't really a thing, right? So scientists didn't really know that there were so many things that were happening inside our gut. They didn't know that there was this gut-brain connection, for example, that there was a huge connection between your nervous system and your gut health, that, the more diverse your microbiome is, the higher your immune response is, or the better your immune response is. So all of this is relatively new. It's about 15 years old, 20 years old, maybe 25 years old, if anything. So from that perspective, it's kind of a new concept for a lot of people, for a lot of modern day medicine, and for everybody else walking on the street. But just to show you how important it can be, not just what you eat, but just how you tend to your gut health. There was a study done by a doctor in the USA where she tested giving just a natural, wholesome diet, with vegetables, nice high quality meat, chicken, nothing processed or ultra processed, nothing with additives or chemicals, etc. And she did this for 8 weeks to a group of women of a specific age. And then the result was that in just 8 weeks of these women just having this diet, nothing else changed, just the diet, they were able to reverse their biological age by 4 years. And your biological age is not your chronological age, but the age of your body and the way your body can process things. And there are certain markers that they measure for that. So things like your organ function or your metabolic health and things like that. So these women, in terms of physical processes that their bodies were doing, they were 4 years younger because they changed their diet in 8 weeks. That is insane. Imagine if you change your diet for 2 years or 5 years or 6 years or the rest of your life. How will you look? How will you feel when you get to 80 years old, right? So I think that's just an example to show how important it is, what you eat and how that impacts your gut health.
Definitely. So understanding the Ayurvedic system as I do, obviously there's dosha type. So does healing one's gut health issues through the Ayurvedic system depend on one's dosha type?
I think that is a good thing to get into, because I think, like everything, with the amount of information that we have nowadays, concepts like this that were studied for years and years and years in the past. So, in order to study Ayurveda, you would be with a teacher for years and years and years and learn these concepts really well. Nowadays, everything needs to be quicker, right? So everybody wants like a quick answer and like a short answer, like, oh, are you this body type? Are you this dosha? Then you should eat this and avoid this, and that's you forever, right? But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. And what I'd like to add to it is that the doshas are kind of like a framework to understand how not only our body work, but the whole world works really, in terms of how the 5 elements interact with each other, and what are the properties of different processes in our world and within us, right? So that we can understand that a little bit better and then address it when there's something that's out of balance. So when it comes to your gut health, yes, it depends on what's your unique body type. But you could be someone who is more prominent on one type of dosha, and we all have all 3 of them in us. All functions are present, but you could be one that's say you're a fiery type, so you're a pitta type. You are more likely to have certain types of conditions, probably because you are that fiery type. But maybe for whatever reason, because of work, because of circumstances, or whatever it is, you started to carry out a very different lifestyle. Maybe one that didn't go with your dosha type. Maybe one that was more like the airy type of dosha, right? So maybe your imbalance is actually a combination of the 2 and is being manifested in a very different way. So this is why there's so much nuisance to it, and that's why we need to kind of deep dive into these things a little bit more to understand really where it's coming from, because sometimes it's not as easy as to say, oh, you're the fiery type, you must have this, and it must be because of X, Y, and Z, because you're the fiery type. So it really, really does depend. And for some people, you could be imbalanced in all 3 doshas, regardless of whether you're one type or the other. So we actually have, in Ayurveda, there's 2 concepts. There's the concept of the dosha that you were born with, that you are, right? And it's like your DNA, and you can't change that. And there's the concept of the dosha that you are imbalanced in, because of lifestyle, because of decisions, because of stress, because of what you eat, because of your environment. So as a practitioner, it might be or if you go by the book, it might be a bit difficult to say, oh, you might be that dosha or you might be that dosha. If you're imbalanced, it might be really hard to tell. So the best thing, first is to cater for the imbalance first, and then you're like, oh, this is definitely my dosha, or you go on that self-discovery journey. Or it might happen at the same time, parallel, but there's a bit of nuisance in that your imbalance might be kind of masking your original dosha. So that's why having the help of a practitioner, someone that really can see you and it knows what it's looking for when it comes to the root cause of the issue, it's really important.
It's really interesting, because how I kind of learned about the Ayurvedic system was that we have our primary dosha. So again, we will have all 3 kind of within us, but we have our primary dosha, and that when we feel out of balance, it's our primary dosha that's out of balance. But from what you're saying there, like we can have our primary dosha, let's just say, I think mine was Vata, so more, okay. I believe that's more of an airy type. So like, it sounds like that maybe I'm balanced in Vata quite well, but Pitta could be imbalanced, and because that's imbalanced, I may still face symptoms from that dosha type, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so let me give you an example. So let's say that you are, or person X is a Vata type, right? Let's use that example. And normally airy Vata is air and ether. So things that are kind of associated with Vata types is that people that are quite like artistic, creative, like they kind of go with the flow a little bit. They might be a little bit abstract, could be, they might suffer from a little bit of anxiety and things like that. That might be something that they suffer with, right? But let's say that's your primary dosha, the one you were born with, the one that you can't get rid of that, because it's kind of like your DNA. The elements of ether and air are more present in your body, and hence you experience the world in a different way than maybe someone that's more fiery. But let's say that maybe not you, if we don't want to make this very personal, but let's say this person, right? This Vata type person.
Make it personal, Victoria. It's all good.
Great. Great. Okay. So let's say that you grew up in a house where your parents were both very fiery, very Pitta types. They were both maybe, let's say, in very like high performing professional jobs, and they valued things like ambition and, you know, results and, you know, maybe academics, maybe things like that, right? Achievements like academics and things like that. So maybe that was the kind of values that were upheld in the place that you grew up, right? So maybe you grew up with this idea that, you know, what's expected of you is that you maybe go to university and choose a very high performing or like a prestigious degree or something like that. Like maybe your parents expected that you became a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or something like that, or an engineer, whatever it is, right? And then you did that and you went for you became a banker, for example, and you're in this very high performing, high stress job, which is associated with the fiery imbalance type of thing. If you're in that situation quite a lot for a lot of time, for a lot of years, in a fiery environment, in a high stress situation, maybe you're consuming a lot of fiery things like red wine and a lot of red meat, even though you're a Vata type, you're gonna get an imbalance in Pitta, because the Pitta in you, the fire in you, is gonna go up. And the Vata in you is also gonna get imbalanced because your true self is kind of being suppressed a bit. So the fire is gonna get imbalanced, the Vata is also gonna get imbalanced. Probably your third dosha is also gonna get imbalanced because the other two are imbalanced as well. And then, you know, we get a bit of a problem. But my point there is that it depends on what the environment is like. Or, you know, it might be to the contrary, that you are actually a Vata type and you grow up in a house where your parents are very Vata as well. And they do lots of Vata things and they travel all the time. And maybe there's not a lot of structure and things like that. And actually you get very imbalanced in Vata rather than in the other two. So I like to say that in Ayurveda, there isn't a yes or no answer. The answer is always, it depends. And that makes you sound kind of like a lawyer, but it really does depend. It really does depend.
And I think sometimes that's a challenge that people face with, especially when it comes to health, because they want those definites, right? And I think when we're talking about health, there's so much to it. You know, it's personalized. It's, you know, there's not this kind of one size fits all. Yeah, you know, there's so much that goes into it that sometimes, as you said, it does depend, right? And it depends person to person and everything as well. Relating this to gut health, so let's just say myself, Vata, imbalanced. Would symptoms relating to gut health within Vata dosha types, would there be common themes amongst kind of all Vata types, or again, is that personalized to that particular person who is a Vata type, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So if you have a very defined primary dosha, so there's people that are just very, like, you know, I have clients or friends, family members that I'm like, oh my God, you're like the book definition of what a Pitta type is. You're the book definition of what a Kapha type is. You're the book definition of what a Vata type is, right? So they're like, they have their primary dosha very like defined. So they're most likely, their symptoms will be very by the book. So the symptoms that they will experience will be associated with their primary dosha. But then there's people that are a little bit more, there's people that literally have the three in a bit of a balance, so it's a bit different. So sometimes for those people, if they eat too much of a Vata aggravating thing, then the symptoms may be related to Vata. But if they eat something that's too much Pitta, then, you know, the symptoms would be a bit more related to Pitta. So, but yeah, if it's like the first example and your dosha is very defined, you're a very Vata, airy, ether person, and you are in balance, you have a gut health issue, primary symptoms will be constipation. All the Vatas are constipated on a constant basis, and that has a lot of reasons why that is. So constipation, bloating, and just that feeling of dryness comes about. And that might be because of many things. It could be because of the time of year. So right now we're in autumn. Vata is air and ether. The qualities of Vata is light, airy, for example, and autumn is has the same quality. So it's like dryness plus dryness gives you more dryness. So at this time of year, there might be a lot more imbalance in Vata people because there's a lot more wind. It's getting colder. It's like a transitioning time between summer and winter. So there's a lot of things that could be happening. So yeah, for sure, I would say the common symptoms would be definitely bloating, definitely constipation, definitely dryness. And it's because Vata people normally, like this might not be you, but normally if you were to put, I don't know, a sample of, 1,000 Vata people in the room, most of them would love like the crispy things, the crunchy things to eat, the very dry things, like the nuts, the crackers, to be like snacking on things all the time. And that then has that effect, that dry effect as well. And like I like something that you said, how we're talking about, it really depends on the person, their unique body type, etc. And it also depends on the fact that we are cyclical beings and we live in a cyclical world as well. So we have seasons. Some places on Earth have 2 seasons, some places have 4. We have daily hormonal cycles, we have monthly hormonal cycles, we have then the cycle of the seasons during the year, but we also have cycles during our lifetime as well. Like, when you're young, you need one like when you're a teenager, you need one thing. When you're in your early 20s, you need something else. When you're, I don't know, 40 plus, you need something else, and so on and so forth. So it depends on various factors, not just your dosha, but also your dosha, and then where are you as well in terms of that.
I would just like to take a quick pause and break to mention Try Dosha. Try Dosha offers only the very best natural skincare products inspired by the timeless wisdom of Ayurveda. All of their ingredients are sourced with care and with over 20 years of experience redefining ancient wellness for the modern age. Tridosha has become a trusted source for all things Ayurveda. No matter your dosha type or skin type for that matter of fact, Tridosha have the very best skincare products for you, whether that's their facial cleaner, neem, shower gel, or anything in between. If you're looking for natural skincare and personal use products without the hidden chemicals and nasties, then Try Dosha is the place to go. Visit the link in the show note description to learn more about Try Dosha and try their range out for yourself. You won't be left disappointed. Now, let's get back to today's episode with Victoria. How do you recommend people approach this? And I'll kind of expand on that, because I think a lot of time within health, we alluded to it very briefly beforehand, a lot of health information out there, and sometimes people can become overwhelmed. Then if we're having this conversation and we're adding on top of that with the changes of the seasons and kind of all these other kind of factors in mind, it can become quite overwhelming, for people. And maybe they don't have the resources right now to go to a Ayurveda practitioner, etc. So, the average person listening to this on the train, listening to this, I don't know, doing their morning workout, whatever it is, how would you personally, I feel like there's a certain mindset, a certain headspace that people are to get themselves in when we're talking about not just gut health, but health in general, right? Of seeing it as this kind of like ever evolving thing, and rather than just wanting to find like one answer, and that be the answer. And, I don't need to think about it ever again in my lifetime, right? It's like, that is sometimes, personally, I feel a trap that people can fall into, rather than being open and becoming more in aware of like your body and kind of, as we said before, and certain foods and stuff. So what's the mindset that you recommend people kind of approach
that's
health
a really
with?
good point. Yeah, I think that, the we need to kind of put it out there that there isn't such a thing as a magic pill. It's more of a daily, journey with yourself to get to know yourself. So I think my first kind of advice, the first thing I always say is that it's exciting to know that you are your own best doctor. You are the best specialist in you. There is no one else in this world that can understand how you feel and where you feel it. And it's really, when you go to the doctor, it's really hard to explain how, if something is painful, for example, and they ask you, but what type of pain, it's really hard to explain, because you can describe it as much as you can, but that person is just not experiencing what you're experiencing. Maybe they are the best expert in the world, maybe they are the best expert in bone health, whatever it is, but say they've never sprained an ankle in their lives, and then you did, and you went to see them. They'll never be able to experience the pain that you're experiencing. That doesn't matter how much you explain to them. And obviously there are helpful things that you can do for practitioners, doctors, to understand what's happening, and with their knowledge they'll be able to take care of you. That's obviously what happens. But my message is that you are living in your body, so you are the best person to figure out what's happening to you, right? So with that, right, taking that responsibility and that also excitement that you can find out the answers because you are best equipped to do so, I think that's really exciting, really empowering. And then it's kind of taking not the decision, but kind of the acceptance that it's more of a journey rather than a destination. Because at the end of the day, you might try 1,000 things and you might not really know what actually made the difference. But what made the difference is the changing of habits that over time, drop by drop, little by little, filled up the whole barrel, and then you hit a health transformation. So if you don't have the resources right now if someone doesn't have the resources right now to go and see a practitioner, a coach, a health expert, whatever it is, I think the first thing they can do, which is absolutely free, is to start taking 5 minutes a day, right? And you can time this, to check in with them and ask themselves very basic questions like, what emotion am I feeling right now? Can I name it? Where do I feel it in my body? Literally the part where you feel it. Give it some sort of characteristic. Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it have a color? Is it painful? How, a bit more of information on that. And then name other body feelings as well. Like, am I hungry? Do I know when I'm hungry? How does it feel like when I'm hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? How does it feel like when I'm tired? Because for example, going back to the concept of doshas, Kappa people, which is earthy people, very like nurturing people, very grounded people, when they're tired, they just feel tired and they just go to bed because they want to sleep. Fire people, they are a lot of the time, they're a little bit more structured. So they're like, my bedtime is 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, I'll go to sleep and that's it. But then Vata people, sometimes they're like wired and tired. Like, it's like the more tired they are, this might be the case, it's the common theme. The more tired they are, the more they want to start doing things or keep doing things because they want to kind of avoid the tiredness type of thing. So it's like, get to know yourself. How do you feel tired? How do you recognize that you're hungry? How do you recognize what you need? And that's going to start giving you more data about yourself. And the more you start getting to know yourself, then maybe you get to the point when you eat something, like, I don't know, you had pasta or something with lots of tomatoes, and maybe you realize, oh, I've had that like 3 times in the last month, and every single time I felt really bad after it. Or I've had this in the last month 3 times, and every time I've had it, I've had a reaction on my skin, or my eczema got worse, or I've got a migraine, or a stomach ache, whatever it is. That's gonna lead you to start recognizing what are the things that you're consuming that are harming you. And then you might do a little experiment. Oh, what happens if I stop eating this for a week? Will I feel better? What happens if I stop altogether? Will I feel better? What happens if I add something else? And maybe then that's the beauty of having so much access to information. Maybe you Google and you're like, oh, could it be that tomatoes cause X, Y, and Z? And then you're like, yes, it does. And that kind of leads one thing into the other, right? So I think, yes, there is a lot of information out there. Yes, we're all quite overwhelmed by information for sure, because I've been there as well. But I think instead of starting with the information out there, start with the data inside, gathering your own data. So when you have some data, you can then go and find the information that's relevant to your own data. And then I think my tip that I always say to people is, if you hear anyone saying you need to eat this thing every single day to do X, Y, and Z, or everybody needs to drink this thing, or everybody needs to drink celery juice every single day for the rest of their life so they can do this, right? I wouldn't follow that advice. I would think twice, because literally nothing is good for 100% of the population. Very rarely treatments in terms of things like drinking something or eating something specific is good for 100% of the population, because it depends on your imbalance. You might be, everything has a quality, so you might be imbalanced in the opposite quality, and eating that thing is going to get you farther away from balance. So I think that's a good kind of metric to figure out whether someone's giving you advice that you should maybe think twice about, or maybe read a little bit more about, especially nowadays that there's so many people putting so much information out there. It's hard to kind of discern what to follow and what not to follow.
Victoria, like, I love so much of that, so many parts of that, from like the personalized approach to inside out first. And also the point that I was going to make was around, we did a few episodes actually on the mindset of becoming your own doctor. And I think overall that's what we're talking about here, is having that mindset. So thank you for sharing all of that. Relating it back to gut health, across the board, across all three dosha types, are there any general things that you think across all dosha types for all people that is harmful to gut health or even our health? I can probably name a few habits that might not be good across the board. Ultra processed food, just generally going against what it means to be human. So if we're stationary, sedentary all of the time, do you see those trends as well within the effects of those with gut health?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of debate and a lot of talk about lots of people saying, oh, there's not such thing as bad foods, stop demonizing foods and things like that, right? I've heard that a lot, and I kind of understand where they're coming from, but I like to make the differentiation between what should be considered food and what should be considered something else. So when we talk about foods, let's set our parameters, right? When we talk about food, I like to talk about wholesome, natural foods that either come from an animal or come from the earth and have been processed to the minimum, right? Because process is a very genetic term, but I could pick an apple and juice it, and that technically would be processing it, right? So we need to kind of be more specific as to what we consider to be processed. And then the second thing is that there are other things that we eat that I wouldn't necessarily consider them foods. And these are the ultra processed types of things that we see all around us, and 90% of the supermarket is made up out of those things. And these are things that start with somewhat of natural ingredients, but they have been so processed, and so many chemicals and synthetic products have been added to these things that, our bodies can no longer recognize it as food anymore. So they are incredibly harmful for our gut health. And I always use this analogy. Imagine that you have a washing machine, right? Your washing machine is built to wash clothes. You put clothes, cotton items, even synthetic items you can put in, but it needs to be a type of fabric, right? And you put dirty clothes and you take out clean clothes. What would happen if you start putting bricks in your washing machine? They are dirty bricks, yes, but if you start putting bricks in your washing machine, I don't think your washing machine would last for one cycle. I think it'd probably break. Because it's not designed for washing bricks. It's designed for washing something a lot softer, fabrics. So I think this applies to our bodies as well. If you put broccoli, if you put meat, if you put chicken, eggs, whatever it is that's wholesome, natural, it came from nature, right? It's been minimally processed, then our bodies are actually made to process that and properly absorb the nutrients from it and discard what it doesn't need to use anymore, and everything's great. But if you start putting bricks into your body, or these ultra processed foods that are full of chemicals and additives and preservatives and all these types of things, just like the washing machine, your body will break because it's just not made for it. It's just the physiology of your digestive tract is not made for it. It's as simple as your digestive enzymes are not, they're not built to process what you're putting in it. So yeah, I think that's an analogy I always like to say to people. So I'm not saying that if you eat something that's ultra processed, or like sweets or cookies or whatever it is that's ultra processed, you're gonna die, right? Because there is this concept that the way that you enjoy food also has a huge impact on how you digest it, and we have that concept in Ayurveda, and that's very important. So I'm not saying that if you do eat it, you're gonna die. You need to think, I'm gonna die tomorrow, right? But it's about being conscious about what you put in your body, right? So if you're someone that eats ultra processed food all day, every day, I'm definitely not saying that you should cut it all off and tomorrow start eating a 100% natural diet, because that might be really hard. Although there's people that love to go cold turkey on things and they might be able to do it, but that's a very low percentage of the population. But what I'm saying is maybe start getting more awareness as to what you're putting in your body and how you're feeling, right? So maybe make a small change. I don't know, if you drink a lot of soda, a lot of carbonated drinks and things like that, maybe go one day without it and see how you feel. Maybe drink half the amount that you're drinking and see how you feel. Like these small steps to gain more awareness and more consciousness as to what the things that you're putting in your body, how they're making you feel and what's the impact they're having, and then take it from there. And then one step at a time. Today is drinking less soda. Next week is a little bit of less sugar and more fruits, and then the week after is changing your frying oil for something that's healthier, like coconut oil or olive oil, and so on and so on. It's these small and consistent steps that's going to make the big difference.
I think that links up well with what we were talking about beforehand, because let's say you have that body awareness of, oh, I have this cookie. Oh, every time I have this cookie, I feel like this. You starting to develop that awareness. So we're not saying, well, I got kind of a few different thoughts there, but we're not saying maybe don't eat the cookie, just don't eat it every single day. Maybe have it as a treat once a month, etc. Whatever it is. Personally, there's this concept from a guy called Sean Stevenson that talks about upgrading the quality of our foods, right?
Exactly.
So, for example, you can have cookies, but maybe instead of using ultra processed flours from grains, you use an almond flour, right? And actually, when I've done this and started to connect more with my food and cook more and bake more, etc., you also start to develop a more closer relationship with the foods that you're eating. And to be honest, this isn't even me bullshitting people, right? Like, they actually taste pretty good most of the time. I don't know what it is. Actually, I kind of find now that if I was to have cookie from a supermarket that I would actually find it too sweet, and
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to eat it,
exactly. Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't say that I don't have a sweet tooth because like I love fruit, right? And fruit
Yeah.
sweet, but then it just tastes different. It's a different type of sweetness, and
Yeah.
kind of and we can kind of go into all that conversation as well, and that dynamic with our foods. But yeah, so I think like it kind of links up to what we were talking about beforehand in terms of this mindset of knowing yourself, knowing your body. Which I was going to say beforehand that I think one of the challenges that people face is they see doctors as like these gods, right? Like they went to medical school, so they know more about health and my body than I do because they've done all this training, right? And I come from, I've learned to come from a my mindset has changed. I was in that mindset when I was younger, kind of seeing doctors, etc., in these godlikely figures, right? And the more I started to pay attention to my own body, how foods make me feel, how even events, right? Event situations in life, what gives me energy, what takes it away, etc. Um, what makes me feel good. You know, when I was younger, I suffered a lot with anxiety and depression, etc. The doctor wanted to put me on pills, and I couldn't make the association between how that was going to make me
Yeah.
uh, feel better because it was an internal thing, right? So you want to take this external thing and, this kind of small pill like this, and that's going to solve all my worries and woes, even though it's created by my own thinking.
Yeah.
Um, and once I started to change certain aspects of my lifestyle, move more, eat better, I started to feel, a bit more kind of positive, I guess, upbeat, in over time, over a period of kind of 5, 6, 7 years, is progressed because I changed my lifestyle and then started to have better thoughts, right? And stuff. And so I guess my point is that I think a lot of times with both what we were talking about there over those two parts, we lose sight of our own bodies and kind of outsource our health, outsource our kind of agency when it comes to our health. And I think a huge part of health is actually, as you said beforehand, is from the inside out, right?
Yeah.
Paying and attuned to kind of how we feel. But Victoria, I'm waffling there. So, but that was just some of my thoughts around that. Ayurveda is so kind of two questions, I guess. One, if you have anything to add that I've been waffling there, feel free to kind of jump in and add anything. Well, one of my final questions was actually going to be around Ayurveda in terms of it's very much comes from like the holistic approach, seeing the human experience is not just the body, which I think again more Western systems kind of see it as very much just kind of body, maybe mind, and kind of that's it. But Ayurveda is very holistic, kind of takes into consideration emotional health, spiritual health. Why do you think a holistic approach is so important when it does come to our health?
So I'll answer that first, and then we'll go back to some of your waffling. But I thought that was really good. So yeah, I think because we are complex creatures, in my opinion. So if you think about yourself, how many kind of sides to you there are, sides to me, how many dimensions to me there are, or any person that you meet, right? We have a lot of thoughts, we have a lot of behaviors, we have a lot of behaviors that we've learned from our parents, from our ancestors, from our environment, from maybe we moved environment, so there's another set of behaviors there, from our ancient fears that we've inherited, and lots of things, right? That even the astrological cycle where we're in, there's so many things that have an impact on how we feel, how we behave, how we develop, that we can't just look at a symptom or a diagnosis and just address that thing on its own. And I think, to me, that's the problem that we're facing with modern medicine, right? Say you are a woman or a person that has a womb, and you have an issue with your womb, and you go to, or your menstrual cycle, and you go to a gynecologist. That specialist is only looking at you as a walking womb kind of thing. Like, they're only looking at that side of your body and the symptoms that you're experiencing there. When you go to a gastroenterologist, they're just looking at the gastro system and what's happening with your stomach, with your gut, etc. But they're not looking at the full picture. And your stomach, your womb, they don't operate in isolation. They operate as part of a whole system that then operates as part of a bigger system, which is the earth, that operates as part of a bigger system. So we definitely need to have that holistic approach because we're complex beings. So we need to take into account, your traumas, your stresses, your food, your weight, the way you sleep, who you live with, all of that. And that might sound overwhelming, but because everything is connected, instead of looking at it as if it is overwhelming and too much, it's like you have many doors to go to the same place rather than just one. When if you have a stomach issue and you go to the gastroenterologist, it's like you only have that one door to figure out how to fix it. But when you look at it holistically, you have so many doors to go through it. You can address it with food, with herbs, with trauma counseling, with your emotions, with meditation, with so many things that you can, with energy healing, with whatever it is. There's so many ways that you can approach it, and hopefully they will all take you to the same place if they're done correctly. So I think that's why it's so important to look at things from a holistic point of view, for sure. Because, and I think your example that you were sharing about your own journey with depression and anxiety, right? Like eating better and moving a little bit more made a huge had a huge impact on how you felt and what you were thinking, right? Well, that's a holistic approach, right? How can what you eat, in bata types, is like anxiety is like a tornado of thoughts almost, or worries, right? It's like there's an inner tornado. And you can actually eat some foods that make the tornado kind of ground a little bit. And then, you feel a little bit more grounded, and that helps. But then you can also do other things like breathing techniques and some yoga movements or some type of exercise that will also going to calm down the tornado. So that's looking at it holistically, not just like, oh, you feel anxious. What are we going to do about that? Well, just stop feeling anxious then. You know what I mean? It's like that one door. No, let's try and get in it through a back door that it feels less invasive, like the foods you eat, and that's going to hopefully impact the anxiety levels because it's going to help you. You're kind of hacking, your way into it. And I think that's why it's so important. And I also wanted to address what you said about upgrading your food and how in Ayurveda we have we work with different essential flavors or tastes, the basic taste that foods have. And modern diet, Western type of diet, is very focused on bitter, sweet, and savory or salty flavors. So our tongue is kind of kidnapped by those flavors. It's either excess like sweetness or excess saltiness, maybe a little bit of bitterness there. But there are other tastes out there. There's pungent, astringent, etc. So when you start incorporating less processed and more wholesome foods, you start tasting these things a little bit more, and then you feel a lot more satiated as well, because your tongue is getting what you need. Your tongue can actually taste different types of flavors in different places. And when you have this mix of like, could be very sour fruits, or could be very like pungent vegetables, whatever it is, you have a mix of those, you start activating these different flavors, and then the addiction to one specific flavor starts to go down. So then your capacity to eat very highly processed sugar, it's a lot less, because you're experiencing other flavors. So people that have a sweet tooth, I have a sweet tooth myself, but exactly, I try to find natural sources of where I can taste that sweetness. That's true sweetness. It's not over the top sweetness, but maybe sweetness from like a fig or a date or an apple or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that you go from being completely addicted to sugar and then next day you drop it and you you will feel the sweetness in an apple in one day, but slowly, you can do it slowly, or you can do it very quickly. It depends on the type of, what you're used to doing. But again, the more you upgrade your foods, the more you'll develop that taste, and that your tolerance for these highly processed foods will go down, and your kind of need for more natural, wholesome foods will go up, and you'll start craving, certain vegetables certain times of the year, certain tastes or certain things certain times of the year or certain times of the month. That depends on what your cycles are.
Definitely been my experience, Victoria. So yeah, it's just just once I became more open to different foods as well, just not just kind of obsessing over that kind of one taste, that's so often we do, especially with modern diets, etc. But Victoria, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very insightful, learning how Ayurveda can help us to fix our gut and diving into the personalized approach. There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to health, and I think Ayurveda, alongside other tools, can help us to navigate this journey. And that's what it is, right? It's a tool, and I think people need those tools, especially in the modern world. But I've liked how we focused on helping people to step into their power when it does come to their health, and as I said, that Ayurveda being one of the tools available at our disposal. So where do people go to keep in touch with your work and connect with you?
So they can visit my website, which is victoriaholistichealth.com. And they can go to my social media, which they can find me on Instagram at Vic Holistic Health, or Facebook as well, Victoria Holistic Health. And yeah, they can just follow me on there, drop me a message. They can read about what I do and a bit more about Ayurveda on my website as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time today. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much.
I hope that you've enjoyed my conversation with Victoria today, where we've been discussing and exploring gut health and health overall through the lens of Ayurveda. The main lesson that I'm taking away from the conversation today is how, while in Ayurveda we obviously have our primary dosha type, we can in fact be unbalanced in all three, and reaching true health is the journey of balancing them all. And it is a journey, of ups and downs along the way. So I'm pleased that we also discussed the mindset needed when navigating health. What are you taking away from this episode, and what positive changes are you going to make in your life as a result? Leave a comment or review below this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I read every comment and review and appreciate you being here. I look forward to sharing the next episode of the show with you really soon. See you then.